boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. The latest as it pertains to WBC interim super flyweight champion Virginia Fuchs, who took to her social media and stated, I wonder what belt I'm going to get next. She posted an image of herself with a mug, WBA merch from the WBA, as if to suggest that she is now taking an interest in challenging for the WBA title held by Florida's own Jasmine Artiga, newly crowned WBA champion Virginia Fuchs, who sports a professional record of 4 wins with no losses, no draws, 1 recorded knockout, 37 years old. Doesn't have all the time in the world to fuss about. In her last fight, she fought for the WBC interim title, then held by Adelaide Ruiz, and that was almost a year ago. If we haven't seen more of Virginia following that fight, it's due to the injury that she sustained in it. That was in August of last year, and it was a pretty grotesque injury, the bone protruding from out of Virginia's thumb, I believe that it was. So as you can imagine, she had to take a significant amount of time off to allow that to recuperate. The remainder of last year, after August, but I hadn't realized how much time had passed. In 2 months, it'll be a year out from that fight. And so, if Virginia has the WBC interim title, which can be used as a segue to challenge Ashley Gonzalez for the full title, why is she looking at Jasmine? Well, because Jasmine is more beatable. If I had to guess, yes, Jasmine Artiga is a more beatable fighter. That is a more winnable fight than an Ashley Gonzalez fight, because Ashley is a lot more experienced than Jasmine. The caveat is that Virginia is not ranked by the WBA, so even if she is interested in challenging Jasmine for what she's got no leverage, no segue to a fight like that. The number 1 contender is Australia's Lynn Sandstorm. And ranked behind Lynn is Liana Cruz, who just beat Regina Chavez in their fight a little over a week ago. So Virginia is not in line to challenge for that title. And I doubt that Jasmine Artiga would give her a shot at it voluntarily, since Virginia is a hot potato. She is a high-risk, low-reward fighter. When you talk about Virginia, you're talking about a decorated amateur. Nicknamed the Captain. Doesn't have a lot of professional bouts or a lot of marquee value that would so entice Jasmine to give her a shot willingly. So Virginia can't force a fight with Jasmine, and Jasmine won't give her one willingly. Not unless somebody steps in and offers her a lot of money to do it. Virginia not being with a major promotional outfit, I don't know who that somebody would be. Hypothetically speaking, if they were to fight in the not-so-distant future, at any point in this calendar year, I would go with Virginia to beat Jasmine Artiga. Virginia's a way better boxer, more well-schooled. She's a southpaw also. Jasmine is very fortunate to even have that title, because I saw when she fought for it against Regina Chavez, and in my opinion, Jasmine got a gift. She shouldn't have won that fight. She shouldn't have got that decision. But she did. And in doing so, became WBA champion. So in a scenario where Virginia challenges her for that title, I absolutely think Virginia would beat her. But alas, she's not in line to fight for that title via the WBA, and at this time she has no leverage to get Jasmine to give her a shot. So she is forced to wait for the World Boxing Council to order the fight between her and Ashley Gonzalez, the WBC champion, which is not as winnable a fight as an Artiga fight. Another glaring example of the inconsistencies within the World Boxing Council, that Virginia Fuchs became interim champion close to a year ago, but they've yet to order that fight, as opposed to what they just did to Dimitri Bivol in the light heavyweight division, to where as soon as he became WBC champion, that's about as soon as it took them to bog him down with a mandatory. They're not as Johnny on the spot when it comes to this situation, and I understand that Virginia became injured last year, but that was many, many months ago. There was enough time in this one. Yeah, we should have heard something by now as to when they plan on ordering that fight. World Boxing Council's bad habit of ordering some fights while leaving others in limbo. Yeah, which might also explain why Virginia is looking at the WBA title, because maybe she's not getting anywhere with the WBC. Jasmine is more beatable than Ashley, making this an attractive fight. Does it happen? I don't think so. I wouldn't mind seeing it. I absolutely believe Virginia can beat Jasmine Artiga, but to do it, she's got to get her in the ring, and that's the hard part. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, It's fight week, folks. It's fight week for Jake Paul like it's fight week for Julio Cesar Chavez, for Zurdo Ramirez, for Uniel Dorticos, for Floyd Schofield, for Thevin Turner. It's fight week, folks. I will be purchasing this pay-per-view if for no other reason than there's nothing else on. And I am interested in some of these aforementioned fights set to go down this upcoming Saturday on DAZN. Why didn't they just do this one like they did Jake Paul's last fight on Netflix and make it available to all Netflix subscribers? Why are they tucking this thing behind a paywall? Not really sure. Now, obviously, Julio Cesar Chavez is not the same iconoclast that Mike Tyson is, and he doesn't make for as big an event still. If you make the fight available to all your existing Netflix subscribers, you're gonna get a lot of eyes on it just because it's on. And on that undercard, we're gonna be seeing Naomi Valle make her MVP debut, Holly Holm. We're gonna be seeing Floyd Schofield take on former super featherweight champion Tevin Farmer, who's coming off of 3 consecutive losses to both Raymond Muratalla and to William Zepeda. So why would a fight between him and Floyd Schofield be interesting? What's intriguing about that? That Floyd is still green around the gills, still kind of flawed. I believe he got dropped. I believe he got knocked down in his last fight. And when you think about Tevin Farmer knocking down William Zepeda in their initial meeting, there is room there for this to be competitive. Call this is sort of an acid test for Floyd Schofield. Not the best, not really, but Tevin is a former champion. He has proven himself a formidable fighter, even in defeat, so maybe he can push Floyd, test him. Floyd Schofield, whose reputation has taken 1 or 2 critical hits in recent months for pulling out of the Ashton Silva fight, for wasting everybody's time with Shakur Stevenson, pulling out of that fight as well, supposedly because he was ill, though ill from what? Terminal case of cold feet. Because he rejected $1 million offer to box Abdullah Mason.
Think about the fans that feel you're afraid to fight people like Shakur Stevenson or Abdullah Mason. Do you think that they're a threat to you?
Well, I gotta say to those fans who have those different type of opinions, y'all some idiots. I ain't gonna lie. One, as y'all can see, Mason is not a threat. You know, and to me, in my opinion, I'm pretty sure there's other fighters that feel that same way.
A few weeks ago as well, so that he could fight a guy coming off of 3 consecutive losses. It is a categorical duck. That's what ducking is, when you reject a difficult fight for one that you interpret as being easier, as being more winnable. But just how winnable is the Tevin Farmer fight? The reason I like this thing in spite of all of Floyd Schofield's ducking is because Tevin Farmer is tough as nails, durable, and quite proficient mid-range to inside. Elusive and a great counterpuncher within close quarters, and Floyd Schofield just so happens to be a close quarters fighter and an action fighter. This is a guy who opens up quite a bit. A talented counterpuncher will have many countering opportunities in Floyd Schofield. Enter Tevin Farmer, who's coming off of 3 consecutive losses, but still, he is still a more experienced fighter than Floyd, so there is room there for this to be competitive. I don't know how much credit you can give Floyd for winning this fight if he does win this fight, but like I said, it's a litmus test for him. Tevin would be, arguably, the best fighter he will have ever fought. I like that fight. I like Dorticos versus Zurdo. Zurdo Ramirez, the Cruiserweight Division's unified champion, who will be satisfying a mandatory this upcoming weekend in the former champion, El KO Doctor, Uniel.
Puta.
What makes this fight intriguing? Zurdo Ramirez, in spite of being a unified champion at Cruiserweight, is still relatively new to this weight. Remember, this is a guy who used to fight as low as 168, got taken to school at 175, and he has since reinvented himself as a Cruiserweight with some success, but still, he hasn't been there very long, whereas Uniel has never been anywhere else.
Puta.
He's a bona fide Cruiserweight with very long arms, very dangerous when he can get full extension on them. He generates devastating power that could pretty much knock anybody out in the Cruiserweight division, so long as he can get full extension on the arm. What Zurdo's got to do is stop that from happening.
How does he do it?
Going back to his old ways. You know, he's become quite the boxer, light on his feet, working behind the jab, setting traps, setting up counters in the Cruiserweight division, though for this assignment, He needs to fight more like he used to fight at 168. He needs to be a close quarters fighter to smother Uniel Dorticos mid-range to inside. That's how Murat Gassiev beat Dorticos many, many years ago in the World Boxing Super Series by crowding him. And that's what Zurdo needs to do to beat him here today. Don't give him enough room to throw, to get full extension on the arm, because if you do, you may regret it. You've got to crash the pocket, crowd this guy, and beat him up from the inside out. Force him to show his age, because Dorticos is the older fighter of the two. I think he's coming up on 40. In theory, winning this fight and satisfying this mandatory would leave Zurdo free to go unify titles with Jai Opetaia. But because Oscar and Turkey, because they're not getting along, and we talked about that in my previous videos, I don't think Zurdo moves in that direction. He could just as easily end up fighting Badu Jack in a unification match in a more winnable fight than an Opetaia fight would be. He could just as easily end up fighting David Benavidez in the fall, whose team has mentioned moving up to fight Zurdo several times already. Just as easily fight them before he fights Jai Opetaia. Those fights are more winnable. Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez in the main event. I feel like if there's any semblance of the old Julio Cesar Chavez, not that he was ever a dedicated fighter, because he wasn't, but if this guy takes this fight seriously, if he's been training seriously, and he takes it seriously, even for a moment, Jake could be in trouble. The reason so many people are convinced he's not, though, is because Julio Cesar Chavez, well, he did lose to Anderson Silva, a retired mixed martial artist who was only dabbling in boxing, enough that he actually beat Julio. So the feeling is that if a retired MMA fighter can beat you, Jake Paul can beat you. I don't read too much into Jake Paul's fights. I chalk it up to sports entertainment. It's just something to watch, like, say, the WWE or the Harlem Globetrotters. It's a spectacle. And I'm not bothered by it. Get your money, Jake. Get it where you can. And I will be watching this Saturday on DAZN, and we'll see how Jake makes out and what that leads to. There's talk of him potentially going into a title fight with either Zurdo Ramirez, who's boxing on this same bill, or Badu Jack. Is Jake really ready for the big time? Is he really ready to fight for a full alphabet title or titles against the bona fide champion? We'll see. Men's heavyweight news. Ahead of Usyk's rematch with Daniel Dubois, his longtime promoter Alexander Krassyuk have parted ways, and we really don't know why. K2 Promotions promoter Alex Krassyuk has announced he will no longer be working with unified heavyweight champion Alexander Usyk. The news comes just 4 weeks out from Usyk's rematch against IBF champion Daniel Dubois, with all 4 belts on the line. The winner will leave as the undisputed heavyweight champion should Krassyuk prevail. You mean Usyk? I do. It would make him a 3-time title holder of all 4 world titles, having already accomplished that feat at cruiserweight and heavy. Krassyuk announced the news late last night on Insta, commenting on the journey both had shared before detailing their successes. It's been a tremendous journey. 12 years of unbelievable success, Krassyuk wrote. 2 young dreamers met each other to change the game. Back in 2013, I gave you my word, and I kept it. At the time, no one believed we were capable of achieving what we set out to do, but by the grace of God, we completed the mission impossible. Krassyuk then noted the milestones we conquered together, beginning in September of 2016 when Usyk defeated Krzysztof Glowacki to win the WBO cruiserweight title. Usyk achieved this feat in just his 10th pro fight 4 years on from his Olympic triumph in London. By July of 2018, Usyk became undisputed cruiserweight champion with a masterclass against nearest rival Murat Gassiev. 6 years later, the Ukrainian hero sat atop the heavyweight division after defeating Tyson Fury. Not once, but twice. A dream come true, Krassyuk added. Thank you for all we've done through and for the honor to be the lifetime promoter of the double undisputed champion. The Instagram post featured the 1995 hit Time to Say Goodbye, performed by Andrea Bocelli and Sarah Brightman. Why is Alexander now leaving, and why is no reason being given? Could it be because this is Alexander Usyk's last hurrah, his final fight in the pro ranks, that after this, he means to retire, and thus, there's no reason for Alex to keep promoting him. And does Alex's departure in any way better Daniel Dubois' chances of victory? Now that the situation is slightly different than it was before, I suppose that all depends on what role you think a promoter has inside the boxing ring. To that effect, Shane McGuigan, Daniel Dubois' old trainer, weighed in on their initial meeting and what he expects to see in their second fight.
It's like you're in there with a different animal. You're in there with a guy that's going to make you fight at a tempo that you just do not like fighting at. You know, you don't like fighting at that pace, and you get flustered at that pace. And if he can land a shot, great. If he can pull it out of the bag, like I'll be celebrating for him. But you just got to look at that last fight and think like the Usyk just dominated that pace and that tempo of that fight and controlled that distance for literally like 95% of the fight. So he's a long way off winning that fight. I hope he does it, because I think it would genuinely just change the landscape of heavyweight boxing. I think it's a new era coming through. You've got Atuma, you've got Dubois, you've got there's younger people coming through, and I think that would be the turning point of it. But I just don't think I just don't believe he'll be able to win it. But he's always got a huge puncher's chance.
What's he missing to win it?
It's just the speed.
So
it's the speed.
What's it do to address that pace then?
Timing. You got to take it away with timing, and you got to throw caution to the wind. But like, look at someone like Chisora threw caution to the wind, really flustered Usyk for the first 2 rounds, then he settled at that tempo. It's a concentration thing for Usyk. He'll keep you concentrating for literally 3 minutes of the round, and that's where heavyweight guys are just used to just taking that little walk off. See, right? Taking that walk off, chilling it down, like fainting, just slowing it all down. But he doesn't allow people to do that. That's why he beats the bigger guys, because athletically he's nowhere near them, but he's able to just control the tempo the whole time.
That's what Shane had to say about it. And Shane has intimate knowledge about Daniel Dubois as a fighter, because he used to train him, for God's sake. And thus, Alex Krassyuk's sudden departure, while significant, may be insignificant to the fight itself. It all really boils down to X's and O's once the opening bell sounds. What Shane said, I've said myself many times here on the channel, that the pace that Usyk sets for a fight is more than a heavyweight can deal with, that their seeming size advantage over him over time is a detriment, because they're going to tire long before he does. And when they do, and those punches are still landing, there's going to be a little bit more on them. They're going to sting a little more, take a lot more out of you. It's more damaging because you're more tired. That dynamic didn't all of a sudden change because Alex and Usyk are going their separate ways. Even if we are all curious as to why all this stuff with Alex is happening now when you're at the end, you may as well see Usyk's final fight through. Why make this announcement? Well, there are questions that need answers, but I don't know how relevant any of this is to the fight that Usyk is about to have. What's for sure is that they have had a long and successful partnership. But all things end, all things good, and all things bad.